When I finished saying her name the third time, the reflection behind me blinked. It started as a joke during a sleepover at Sarah's house. We were bored, fueled by too much caffeine and that restless energy that only hits after midnight. The bathroom was cramped, smelling like cheap vanilla candles and toothpaste. We stood there, shoulder to shoulder, laughing because the whole idea felt so dated and harmless. I remember the tiles felt freezing against my bare feet. I took a breath, leaned in, and said the words for the third time. The silence that followed was heavy, but we giggled. Then I leaned back to grab a towel. My reflection stayed leaned in. For a heartbeat, my eyes in the glass did not follow mine. They stayed fixed on the empty space where my head had been. Then it caught up. After that night, the mirrors stopped being empty. It started as a subtle shift in the atmosphere every time I entered a room with glass. I'd be brushing my teeth, eyes focused on the sink, and the room would shift in a way I couldn't explain. Every time I looked up, there was this lingering sense of a shape just off-center. Not a clear figure, but a density in the air that shouldn't have been there. I'd see it in the hallway mirror when I walked to the kitchen at night. A flash of pale skin or a smudge of shadow that didn't match my own movements. My heartbeat felt loud enough to give me away. I started holding my breath without realizing it, my lungs burning as I waited for a sound that never came. One evening, I was washing my face, eyes squeezed shut against the soap. The space behind me suddenly felt crowded. It wasn't a touch, but a heavy, static pressure that made the hair on my neck stand up. The silence felt staged, like something had just gone still. I forced my eyes open, water stinging, and stared into the glass. There was a jagged, gray outline standing inches behind my shoulder. It didn't move. It just existed in the reflection, watching me with eyes that looked like holes. My throat seized. I blinked, and the glass was suddenly clear again. Empty. Just the sound of the faucet. I tried to tell myself I was just tired. Work was stressful, and that stupid sleepover ritual had just gotten under my skin more than I wanted to admit. But my sleep pattern changed immediately. I started waking up at exactly 3:12 a.m. every single night. No alarm, no noise, just my eyes snapping open in the pitch black, heart racing for no reason. The silence in my apartment felt wrong. Not quiet, wrong. I'd lie there for what felt like hours, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through logical explanations. It's just an internal clock thing, I told myself. A weird habit my brain picked up because I was spooked. Then the time started slipping. I'd be in the kitchen making coffee, staring at the dark reflection in the microwave door, and suddenly 15 minutes had passed. I didn't remember moving or even thinking. I couldn't remember the last time I felt warm. In fact, I started rushing through my morning routine. The steam on the bathroom mirror felt like a canvas for things I didn't want to see. I started leaving the lights on in every room, racking up an electricity bill that I tried to laugh off as a fear tax. But even with the lights on, something kept interrupting the edges of my vision. I'd catch a glimpse of something moving in the TV screen when it was turned off, a flicker of gray that vanished the moment I turned my head. I told myself it was just floaters in my eyes, just physics, just fatigue. But the denial was getting harder to maintain. I felt this constant, nagging tension in my shoulders, like I was bracing for an impact. I hoped that leaving my apartment would help, but the feeling persisted even at work or in elevator mirrors. I could feel it sitting in the passenger seat of my car, invisible until I glanced at the rearview. I hadn't left it behind. Whatever I had invited in that night had anchored itself to me. It followed me through my front door and into the quietest parts of my head. I wasn't alone in my own home anymore. I spent 3 nights straight scrolling through archive threads and obscure paranormal forums. I was looking for anyone who understood why my own reflection felt like a stranger. I found them, dozens of people spanning years, all describing the exact same progression. They talked about the delay in the glass. They talked about the cold breath. They talked about the 3:12 a.m. wake-up calls and the way the air seems to curdle around any reflective surface. Every post started the same way. A joke, a dare, a bathroom mirror. They all mentioned Bloody Mary like it was some harmless childhood game, but the comments below told a different story. The patterns were too consistent to be a coincidence. People described seeing the same pale, distorted face peering over their shoulders in dark windows. They mentioned the way their reflections eventually stopped imitating them altogether, staring back with an autonomy that defies everything I know about light and glass. Some users hadn't updated their accounts in years. The last posts were always frantic, written in all caps, talking about something finally stepping out. That's when the dread really sank in. I kept seeing the same pattern, and the worst part was realizing I was already inside it. It always ends badly. It always ends with someone disappearing. I stopped being terrified by the sudden movements in my peripheral vision and started understanding the logic behind why this was happening to me. This wasn't a random haunting or some cosmic glitch. It was a selection. I think back to that night and realize I was the one who wanted it to be real more than the others. I've always felt a bit disconnected, a bit out of sync with my own life, and maybe that made me the perfect anchor. I wasn't just a victim, I was a host. The ritual needs a specific kind of hollow space to fill, and I've spent years being that space, looking for a reflection that actually felt like it belonged to me. My daily life is unrecognizable now. I don't use the bathroom with the lights off anymore. Actually, I barely use it with the lights on. I've taped heavy construction paper over the mirror in the hall and the one in my bedroom. I look at the floor when I walk past the oven or the microwave. I sold my dressing table for next to nothing. Even my phone is a constant risk. I keep the brightness at max and have a matte screen protector on it, so I never have to see my own dark reflection staring back when the screen goes black. It's an exhausting way to live, but the paranoia has become my only defense. I can feel the presence even when I'm miles away from a mirror. It's like a weight in the room, a displacement of air that follows me everywhere. I'm starting to realize that the glass was just the beginning. It was the door, but she's already through it. The fear isn't sharp anymore. It doesn't make my heart race like it used to. Instead, it's just this heavy, constant hum in my bones. I've stopped expecting her to leave. I've stopped praying for it to end. I wake up at 3:12 a.m., I check the corners of the room, and I go back to sleep. This is just how things are now. The terror has become a routine, a dull ache that I've learned to live around. I'm not running anymore. There's nowhere to go where the glass won't find me. The mistake happened because I got comfortable. It's easy to think that after weeks of living in the dark, curiosity would be dead. But the silence eventually becomes more unbearable than the fear. I was in the bathroom, reaching for a towel, and for just 1 second, my guard went down. I looked up. The glass was partially uncovered, just a corner of it, but that was all it took. My reflection was already waiting. It didn't mimic the surprise. It didn't move at all. It just stood there with a terrifyingly calm expression, watching me with eyes that felt miles deep. There was no panic, no attempt to look away. I just felt this cold, heavy click in my chest, a sudden, irreversible understanding of the geometry of the room. I wasn't the one standing on the tile anymore. I was the image trapped behind the surface, and she was the one reaching out to touch the frame. The roles hadn't just switched. They had finally been corrected. I wasn't the person. I was the echo. Time doesn't work the way it used to. I don't know if it's been days or months since I last felt the sun on my skin. Everything is muted, filtered through a silver haze that never lifts. The fear that used to keep me awake is gone, replaced by a hollow kind of recognition. When I see her now, I don't flinch. I don't even blink. We just exist in the same overlapping space, two halves of a thing that finally clicked. I spend my time staring at smooth, cold surfaces, waiting for the moments when the light hits just right. It's funny, really. I used to be so afraid of being replaced, of losing my grip on the world outside the glass. But as I watch the person on the other side move through my life, wearing my clothes, using my name, I don't feel angry. I just feel a quiet envy because she looks so much more real than I ever was.